Welcome to the Comet ML Open Office Hours, powered by the Artists of Data Science. I'm super excited to have all of you guys here. It is Sunday, June 11th. I can't believe that it's like already halfway through the year, man. It's been going quick, man. I'm super excited to have all you guys here. Whether you are watching on YouTube, on Twitch, or live on LinkedIn, if you guys have any questions at all, go ahead and put them in the chat. Also, there is a link for you to join us right here in the live room. I would love to have all of you guys here joining us. So let's kick things off, man. I'm wondering. I was thinking about this earlier while I was doing some dishes this morning. Thinking about what do I find so interesting about data science and about machine learning, and I figured this would be a great question to kind of kick the hour off with. So I want to know, you guys, what do you find so interesting about machine learning? What kind of drew you to this field? Let's go ahead and start with Christoph, and then we'll hear from Maren. Christoph, what is it about machine learning that you find super interesting?
I knew you were gonna pick me for some reason. uh, what I like is that there's a lot of math in it, because when I was in high school, I was pretty good at math, but I never had the idea what I could do with it. And after I just learned how to program, it was like 2 years ago, I had no idea about what machine learning meant. I knew there was such thing, but I didn't know what it actually meant. And when I discovered that it involves a lot of math, and I was like programmer, but never using math skills, that's what actually helped me to choose machine learning. So that's how I started learning, because I thought I could finally use this, I'd say, ability to learn math.
Nice. Awesome, man. That's cool. Let's hear from Maren. Maren, what about you? What was so interesting about machine learning for you?
I knew that you will pick me up too.
Well, there's not
Well,
many people in the room, so
there are only six people, five excluding you. So actually, I'll go in a more general thing. I think a lot of us who are here, and basically engineers and scientists, they like solving puzzles. We're curious in nature and want to find answers. I mean, we ask a lot of questions and want to find answers. And before, I was happy to be solving puzzles, but at some point, my puzzles that I was solving were leading nowhere. They didn't have any outcome, tangible outcome. And discovering that, I'm going to switch a little bit, not machine learning so much. Machine learning is for me sort of a tool to achieve something. But as a data scientist, you can ask a lot of questions and find answers to some things that are not obvious to people. And that's what drew me to the field. So solving puzzles in the first place, but puzzles that actually have some impact when you find the solution to the puzzle.
I absolutely love it, man. These are some great reasons to get in the field. I love that nobody mentioned, the fact that we just get paid good money. Like I love that you guys actually came through with the real reasons that you're interested in it. For me, I just like doing hard things. Like this is it, to me. It's like it's difficult to do, but I enjoy doing it because it's fun and it's exciting and it's like I just feel like the return on learning, just the acceleration curve just gets steeper and steeper with everything that I do, at least. So that's one of the main reasons why I love this field of data science, why I love machine learning. It's super interesting, it's super fun, and being able to possibly predict future things, like to me that's like super exciting as well. But yeah, man, super excited to have all you guys here. If you guys have questions, everybody tuning in on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitch, please do let me know what your questions are, or better yet, join us right here in the room. I'd be happy to have you guys here. Shout out to everybody else in the room. I see one of my friends is here, Nikesh. Nikesh is the mastermind behind the editing and mixing of the Artist of Data Science podcast. So thank you for hanging out, man. Appreciate everything that you do. So let's open it up for questions. What's up to Bharat? Actually, Bharat, we didn't get a chance to hear from you, my friend. So, Parth, what is it about machine learning that you find so interesting that kind of drew you to the field?
Okay, first off, I'm still sort of transitioning to the machine learning field. I'm still working as a software engineer, so I'm getting there. And yeah, the nature is like I loved math back in my high school days since I was a kid. So pretty much what Austin said about, you know, being in a place where I could actually use math. And then I ended up liking programming too. So this seemed like a perfect combination of those things. And you even get to do a lot more exploratory stuff, and you can get into something like predicting the future and having somebody take action based on the future you predict, and also have a solid reasoning for how or why you predicted a future. I mean, how cool is that? In most other professions, do you really get to do that?
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. Awesome. Hey, well, let's open it up, guys. Let's take questions on any topic whatsoever. I mean, well, actually, Austin, like, what draws you to the field of machine learning? Because I mean, you can be working for any type of industry, any type of tech company, but what is it about machine learning in particular that you find really interesting?
Yeah, there's what I'm realizing, I think, is there's a few things. Like one is that especially in the there's just like a huge community focus. A lot of people feel really dedicated to like helping each other out in ways, and sort of like this like rising tide lifts all boats sort of attitude. I mean, it's obviously very competitive, and like we're all out to like advance ourselves, but there's also this sort of like, we do that by making it more explainable, making all this stuff more explainable, making it more as transparent as we can. Being creative about the way we think about use cases. And it's a field that is like growing so fast. So it's like, there's all these kinds of like intersections with my sort of artistic past or my more creative past, like generative art, text generation, like all these kinds of things I can find within it, something that appeals to these different parts of me. Like I'm not a data scientist, I'm not anyone who codes or anything like that, but I think those kinds of things, the community part of it, and then there's this like, there's room for creativity and generativity, and it's just evolving so fast. I think that's implicit in the study of the field itself.
Yeah, speaking of that creative, like generative art part of it, I was reading my friend's book earlier this weekend. My good friend John Crone. You guys might recognize John Crone. He's the host of the Super Data Science podcast. Become pretty good friends recently, but I was reading his book. He's got some excellent chapters here. I was reading the chapter specifically on natural language processing because that's what I've been interested in recently. But chapter 3 in this book talks about machine art. So machine art, and it's really, really interesting. He's talking about GANs, like, and things like that. So code examples and everything. I thumbed through that chapter, but I was just like, my mind was blown by how cool this stuff is. So yeah, if you guys get an opportunity to check out John's book, man, John is awesome. He's got an amazing series on YouTube as well that kind of goes in depth behind the math and everything. So I do see some questions starting to roll into the chat. I know that Christoph, you had your hand up prior to Marion, so we'll go to Christoph, then we'll go to Marion, then we'll see any other questions that come in through LinkedIn or YouTube. I got my eyes peeled, guys. We got you taken care of. Go for it, Christoph.
So my question isn't about data science. So I can wait if other questions are more important and can help.
Yeah, but definitely if you want to defer, for sure. Let's see what else going on. So Marin had a question here about data science position at Oracle. He wants to know if this is for real. I don't know if I should pull that up and put Oracle on blast during Comet's office hours, but what was the question you had
actually, I did a search just this morning. A couple of days ago, I did the search, and they had like 1,600 positions just for data scientists in the United States.
Wow.
On their website. And then this morning I did the same search. Now there are 3,400 something jobs. Is it possible? I mean, this is ridiculous to me.
So I'm not sure what the question was. Is it possible for there to be that much opportunity? Yeah, definitely. I think you're muted, Marin.
Sorry, to have that many openings and to increase the positions in couple of days, actually.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Twice.
We're talking about this on Friday during the Artist Data Science Happy Hour with, I had a bunch of friends on. Kenji was there, Vin, Ben Taylor, Joe Reese, and all them. We're talking about, is data science dying or going anywhere? And no, it's not. It's just only going to increase more and more. Why? Because look at the world we live in. This is like the fourth industrial revolution, right? Where now more than ever, data is being generated at speeds that were impossible, before. We need people to go through that data and make sense of it, make meaning of it. There's new products that can be developed, new things that could happen with all this wonderful data that's being collected. So I don't think data science is going anywhere. And can a company have 3,000 open positions? Yeah, definitely. Oracle is freaking massive. So I definitely think it is absolutely possible, for an organization that large to have that many open positions. But yeah, I don't think data science is going anywhere. I only see data related roles just getting proliferating more and more, right? It might not be just the data scientist job title. I think you might start seeing more requisitions for data engineers, machine learning operations engineer, data architects, machine learning architects, things like that. Just a set of skills where you need people to work with data and build pipelines and systems that take data from the real world into some end use application and everything in the middle. So definitely not going anywhere. Let's go ahead and let's take this question here from Satish. Satish, my friend, go for it. And why does it look like there's another Harpreet Sahota in the in this room? That one's not me. So Satish, go for it. Satish, you are muted. So if you want to unmute yourself, go for it. So it turned out that second Harpreet Sahota was actually Renata. Satish, you are still on mute. I'll go ahead and I'll read the question out from Satish here. He's doing PGP and AI ML in Great Lakes, still MNCs, internally not considering people who done with courses. Please suggest me how to get into a project when people expect real-time experience. So I'm not sure how to answer the first part of the question. I'm not sure I really understand the first part of the question. So Satish, if you want to talk to us about that, please do. But I mean, in terms of suggest how to get into a project when people expect real-time experience, like I think when you see a job posting and the job posting is asking for experience, it's not necessarily work experience. You can get experience on your own, right? Like you can build projects on your own, right? And you just develop experience through that. So, I mean, what project should you do? I'm not sure. Like, what are you interested in, right? Maybe you are interested in music and maybe you have Spotify and maybe you use Spotify tremendously. So then maybe you can build a small project where you're pulling data from your own listening data from the Spotify API, doing some, transformations with it, putting it into some database, whether it's a cloud database, local database, and then doing some type of analysis with it, right? I mean, you're only limited by your creativity, but I see Satish, you are unmuted, so I'll let you go for it. Still cannot hear anything from Satish. No, Satish, you're actually not audible. So, go for it now. Maybe we can hear you. Try it again. Yeah, still nothing. All right, so figure out your audio situation. We'll come right back to you. I see there's a lot of questions coming into the chat, but I guess how to get into a project when people expect real-time experience. Real-time experience does not mean work experience. It could be experience on your own. And it's just a matter of building a project that you find interesting, right? That you would enjoy doing. That's end to end, right? With respect to MNCs, not considering people who done with courses. I mean, I've got comments on that. I don't know if I want to vocalize them here, but we can talk about that later. Let's continue on with Marin's second question. Marin, go for it. And Satish, if you figure out your audio situation, do let us know.
Okay, my second question is, a couple of days ago, I had a chat with a guy who has started his own startup, and that's actually very common. Some startups offer unpaid internship. This one was 3 months. I don't know how to look at it. There are sort of, it's a learning experience and opportunity to tag a company name that you're working at a company. But is it helpful actually? Let's say I'm transitioning from another field and trying to get into data science and machine learning. And is it helpful in terms of helping you to get a sort of real job in another company, or there's better way? And the other thing is sort of, it seems to me, I don't want to use the word, but I cannot find a better description. It's almost like exploitation. People like me in a position that they need real experience, and I think Satish also mentioned that. How do we get real experience? And I feel in a way that it's somebody's taking advantage of me. Am I correct? And first, is it helpful to get a unpaid internship at a startup so that you can actually start a career?
Yes.
And second,
yeah. So if you're a student, if you're in university, yeah, do unpaid internships if you need to. Obviously, getting paid is better. So if I had the opportunity ahead of me, in front of me, to either get paid or not get paid, I'm always going to pick the opportunity to get paid. And if getting paid means I keep my day job and work on something on my own on the side, then I'll do that. I wouldn't quit my job and go to an unpaid internship, I guess is what I'm saying. So that second point about that exploitation part, I mean, I've got no comment on that. That's just no comment on that whatsoever. But like, here's the thing, guys, like, you can build projects, you can gain, this is the only field where you can gain experience by not having a job, right? To be an accountant, you have to actually work in an accounting firm. You have to work underneath an accountant. To be a financial advisor, same thing. You've got to work in a financial advising office. You got to do all that stuff. But we live in a world where if you want to break into this field, you can do it on your own by building a project on your own. Data is everywhere. There's open data portals, right? There's APIs where you can get data for all of your wearable devices. It's up to you to leverage that to build a project that can showcase your ability to do the job, and then apply for as many jobs as possible, share your work with as many people as possible. I mean, not to just promote myself, I'm developing a course currently called How to Create a Project That Will Get You Hired, that will be out in a few months. But you can do it. You just have to have just the skill and the discipline and the interest and creativity to make it happen, right? This is the only field, I think, where you can get real world experience without having a job. Like, I don't know many other fields outside of software engineering, outside of data science, outside of this IT kind of realm where you can get experience like that. So should you quit your job, take an unpaid internship? That choice is yours. Would I do it? Absolutely not. I would rather just keep my full-time job and work in the early mornings or late evenings whenever I have a couple of free hours on a side project, just to develop my skill, right? And then share that project with as many people as possible, talk about it as much as possible, write articles about it, put it on your resume, talk about it in interviews, things like that. I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions or comments. And I'm monitoring all the channels right now. There's a lot of questions coming in, so I'll get to all of them. Marin, go for it.
Just a quick follow-up. I have sort of a little bit of experience when applying for job. Most of the companies put in the requirement that you should have sort of 2+ years experience in industry setting, industry environment, which means that you should have worked somewhere as a data scientist or machine learning engineer or whatever. So in that sense, the internship gives you, well, it doesn't give you the 2 years, but at least it says that you're working at a real company that does data science or machine learning.
Yeah. So you could do this. How about round up 4 of your friends in a distributed environment, right? And you guys work on a project together. That way you have to worry about version control. That way you have to worry about delegating tasks. That way you have to worry about managing people and dealing with deadlines and things like that, right? Create the environment for yourself. You can do that in this field, right? And any company that says you need 2 years of actual work experience, like they're and you're talking about this other experience you've got, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, well, that's pretty much the same thing that we do here, except you're just doing it on the side for fun, right? So if you're worried about real world work experience, get 3 or 4 of your friends together. You guys come together, work on a little project where you guys have to worry about version control, where you have to worry about data versioning, where you have to worry about experiment management. Maybe you can use a tool like Comet ML or whatever, right? And make it happen, right? Somebody is asking a question here about business impact. How do you pick projects such that you can showcase business impact when you don't really get access to real world data? Is everywhere, my friend. Go to an open data portal. That is real world messy data, right? In terms of business impact, look, man, like if you obviously it's going to be a little bit more difficult to show business impact if you're doing a personal project, but you can still frame the potential business impact of it, right? You can still talk about, oh, if this was deployed into the real world, here's the impact that it would have had. Here's what it would have done, right? You could still think about and conceptualize, okay, if this was in the real world, here's what I think would happen, right? You could still think about and hypothesize what the business impact is without actually having the business impact, right? Because that's what actually matters, right? Is the fact that you can actually think about, conceptualize, understand what the business impact would be of the work that you're doing, right? Because you're not just like doing randomized search just for the hell of it, right? You're doing it so you can find a model that's going to move the needle on some other metric, right? You have to tie your model metric to a business metric, and you can still think about and conceptualize what that is going to be like. So all of these things you can what's the word I'm looking for? You could simulate in a project, in a personal project. I'll stop ranting for right now. Let's see if there's any other questions. If anybody has a question, go for it. I think Sri had a question. So, Austin, go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to say, following up on that point, that I think that sort of work of speculation or really thinking critically about business impacts is like something that you can just build into your process of doing projects, regardless of what the answer is. It's sort of like the way you document your projects, the way you're either writing reports or doing something like that should always be like, you think of it as like there should always be a section of the thinking that's done and the crafting of the project that's done, even if it's like you pull out 2 potential use cases and you just sort of explore them a little bit. I think like that, just making that part of the practice as opposed to attaching it on at the end is something you have to do, just like make it part of your thought process in project building. I've seen that folks who do that tend to be more successful in tying all things together and making their projects cohesive and thoughtful from end to end, just from the projects that I've seen and worked with before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Austin. So yeah, combine what Austin was saying, combine what I was saying, and then think about the business aspect and document it and just showcase that you are thinking about it, that, you can not only can you code and think about data, but you can think about the real world impact implications. Sri, go for it.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about, and this kind of related to the project subject as well, but when we talk about doing a project, there's often a lot of discussion about, especially if you're trying to talk about the project in a resume, you're going to talk about what the business impact was, what you hoped to achieve with the project. In that regard, I had a specific question because my interest is specifically in healthcare. And from a previous job, I have experience in healthcare, and I wanted to leverage that experience and that knowledge and look for a project in the same domain. So I did find a data set, I think a year ago, and then I stopped working on it. Then I finished it recently. And I found another data set, kind of unrelated, but in the same field. So now I have 2 projects in that same field. that are completed, and that mainly came from my interest in the field and kind of to expand on my domain knowledge and kind of use that and see how I can apply machine learning to that. How do you go about addressing the business impact when it's not a business-driven project to begin with? The purpose of the project is more oriented towards whether you can apply machine learning in diagnostics, for example. So how do you talk about something like that in a resume where everything revolves around I drove X business, I drove like X business objectives and earned the company X dollars? Like how do you navigate that field?
I mean, who said everything has to revolve around that on a resume? Like, where's that preconceived notion coming from? Like, you could still use a star format. You could still do situation, task, action, result, right? Result doesn't necessarily have to be a business result. If you're not working in a business setting, it could be a finding, right? Or a hypothesis. Okay, like, because I did this, here's the result that I think might occur, right? You could still frame it that way on a resume, right? And if it's a personal take-home project, right? Like the end business impact, I don't think really matters. You know what matters is the way you think through everything you did, right? From conceptualization of the problem statement to gathering data to cleaning data to all the analysis in between to how your analysis informed your choices for the model that you're going to develop, how you picked models, and did you consider the problems that might occur if you were to deploy this model? How are you going to correct for that, right? You can still think about all that stuff and speak to all that stuff, even though it didn't really drive business impact, right? Like, is what I'm saying making sense, right? Like, you're just focused on the real world business impact. Well, what about all the thought process that had to go through it? And if you can explain that and talk about that clearly in an interview, people are gonna be like, oh, okay, well, shit, this kid knows what he's talking about. Cool, right? Because you can put business result on your resume and then come to a fucking interview and the dude's gonna be like, and not know what the fuck you're talking about. And the dude's gonna be like, holy shit, man, this guy's a joke. He's just making shit up and putting it on his resume, right? Like, who do you want to be, right? Like, I'd rather pick the guy who, you know, when I press him and talk to him about these type of questions in an interview, he's gonna show me that, yeah, I've thought about this, I've thought about that, and this is what I think might have happened, even though it wasn't really a business impact, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you need to be able to think and communicate and show that you were thinking through this process from start to finish. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, your projects, it sounds like if you were in an interview, you'd crush it because you thought really deeply about the problem space you're working with and potential impact that could have. Even though it didn't really go out to the real world, you still thought about what could happen if this thing was actually out there in the real world, which is important, right?
But my problem has been trying to get past the resume stage, because if you're looking at a resume and someone's going to glance at it for 5 seconds before throwing it in the trash.
Yeah. So let me pause you right there. Let me pause you right there. Once you apply for a job and submit your resume, do you just leave it at that? Are you?
I try to find people on LinkedIn and try and pester them, but results are mixed.
Yeah, so you've got to make sure you're targeting the right people, right? So go to the company's LinkedIn profile, look for the technical recruiter, look for people who are higher up, not just like individual contributor data scientist, but somebody who looks like they've got some clout, they've got some say in the decision-making process. Reach out to them, point them to a project, and connect to be like, oh, you guys in this company are doing this thing. Well, check this out. I've got a project that does this thing, which is very similar to the work you're doing, or, you know, is related to it somehow. Check it out. And by the way, I applied for this job. My resume is in the system. If you get an opportunity to check it out, be happy to talk more with you, right?
Okay.
And then it's just a numbers game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you need to have some expectations for every job that you apply for, right? Like, realistically, like the moment you submit a resume to then reach out to somebody and try to get the process kicked off, any given job, you have like less than a 1% chance of landing that job, right? Realistically, right? So what do? You make sure that you apply to as many jobs, and you make sure that as you progress along the process for a job, that you're updating your probability of landing that job based on your experience in the interview, right? And then, for me personally, any interview I go to, even if I think I crushed it, I still give myself no more than a 15% chance that this thing is actually going to pan out and I'll get a job offer. Now it's like, okay, cool. Well, if it didn't work out, great. I assigned it this probability of not working out. So whatever, I'm just on to the next one, right? It's just a matter of tempering your expectations and just making a numbers game, because that's what it is, right?
It reminds me of a book. I don't know, was something about thinking in bets or
yes,
yep, that's what it was.
Thinking in bets. That's that book shook me to my core. That book changed my life. You should listen to the interview I did with Annie Duke. It is on my podcast. I did an interview with the author
of the
book, Annie Duke. Yes, it is.
Okay.
So check that out. But yeah, that book
take a look.
changed my life, shook me to my core, changed the way I view the world, because here I was, a statistician, somebody who loved probability theory, just never having it explained to me in that context. Oh my God, man, that book changed my life. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend listening to the interview I did with her as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So yeah, every time I hear people talking about the struggles they have in the job search, I'm just like, dude, you guys are just making excuses for yourself. Just do it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. Like you have to improve and iterate through the job search process. And you do that by making sure you're doing mock interviews, making sure you're applying for jobs, making sure that your project looks good, right? Like there's no entitlement just for submitting a resume. Like nobody's going to call you back just because you submitted a resume. You have to put in work to make it happen. Anything you want to have happen for you, you've got to put in the effort to make it happen. So a lot of the stuff I see with people like complaining to me about the job search process, I'm like, dude, you just need to get out of your own way. Like you have to, right? Sorry, hot take there. Go for it, Satish. You wanted to speak on something about something, so speak on it.
Yeah. So actually, so since when I was in Accenture from the last 2 years, so I used to attend some boot camps within company itself, like 5 days boot camp, 3 days boot camp. So they used to take one Kaggle data set, and like that they used to explain. Even they used to explain sometimes in like Tableau, Python, Tableau, and Python, Azure, even Azure ML, like this. So I went through all these kind of things. So I know end to end, like what is the process, but now I changed to the TCS. So what happens, like even I put efforts, I know the entire process, right from like preparing from portfolio, like by taking real life data, like I could see if people they used to say, like,
but do you have proof? Like knowing it is one thing, but proof that you can do it is another thing. So do you have proof that you can do it?
Definitely, I will do that. I can prepare that.
Then until then, bro, like I can't open your skull and be like, oh shit, he knows all this stuff. Nah, man, you need to show me. You need to show me through a project, right? Like if you're just like, oh, I took these courses, I did these certificates, why can't I get a job? Because man, nobody can open your head and verify that you know something. You need proof of work. You need to.
That is one thing I need to focus on. Definitely, I do that.
Okay, that's that's like the only thing you need to focus on if you want to get a job. That is the only thing you need to focus on is, okay, I know all these things. Let me now put it to work in the real world. Let me make this happen, right? And showcase it. So yeah, sorry, go on.
That is the first hurdle. Okay. And second thing is, so within company, if you want to change career transition, let's say I'm working on mainframes, I want to switch into data science. Okay. Even though I did some courses, but they are expecting at least 6 months experience. See, without getting into some project where actually data science projects are there, you cannot get that exposure. Even if you want to apply outside, go for interviews and face that. And once if you attend 10 to 15 interviews, definitely you get questions, you can crack it. But people, they definitely like with the knowledge, we don't want people. We need people with the real-time relevant experience. So that is what I could see in so many managers. These people in my network, they used to post, and they're clearly saying we don't want people like this. We need people with relevant experience only. So that is kind of another challenge we can see these days.
Yeah. So where are you based out of? Where are you looking for jobs? Are you in India, looking for jobs in India?
Yeah, India only.
Yeah, dude. Like I've know nothing about the Indian job market. Like I can't speak to it. Why? Because obviously I'm Indian, but I've never lived in India, never worked in India, never had to find a job in India. Like the advice I give is highly only relevant to the Western world because it's an entirely different value system. It's an entirely different culture. Not only that, like what's the population of India? Like 1 point something billion. That means proportionally, you've got like 30 times the number of applicants for any given role than somebody in the US would have, right? So you got a lot more competition, man. Like shit's different over there, right? And I can't really speak to it. So what they want in India, bro, like I have no fucking clue. No clue whatsoever. I'm speaking only from a North American standpoint, Western world standpoint, right?
Okay.
So I don't know, like I don't know what they want in India. Like I've seen the job applications for some of these things in India. I'm like, all right, well, you guys want Hercules. So
I'm also having Canada PR in process. So my aim is for Canada only, actually. Maybe if it picks from Indian people, like maybe down the line next 3 to 6 months. So my aim is for search in Canada as well. So before that, I just want. So first thing is I will focus on building portfolio with real-time data sets end to end. And another thing is, so like this, another challenge here, India is it's quite difficult. Like people like they are not welcoming people like this. Even within company itself, they are asking it. So recently I got an email for onsite for London, but they are expecting experienced people only. So with this mindset, like people, we can prove work, right? I can say I can from right from data collection till deployment, I can show them like this is how what I did. But people, when people are not ready, that is very difficult to get into a field. So
yeah, like I said, man, I can't really speak to what things are like in
Yeah.
India, just because like you literally have 30 times the competition as a US candidate would have, and you have 300 times the competition that a Canadian would have, just because the sheer volume of people you have living there, right? And nowadays in India, it's like, okay, before it has to be lawyer, doctor, engineer. Now it's like doctor, engineer, or data scientist. So everybody's trying to be a data scientist. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what the situation is like there. So you're going to have challenges to face there. And, you know, whether my advice applies to you or not, I don't know. Clearly, it sounds like you're having issues. So, I mean, talk to Krish Nayak. He might be able to help you out. So we'll just move on.
Because for experienced people like us, advantage is we have domain knowledge. We know how things will go from right from scratch until deployment, even for other technology as well. But still, this relevant experience is the only concern. This is what for experienced people I mean to say. It's like
Yeah. So like I said, relevant experience is also a personal project deployed that you either is running locally or in a cloud and some server. That stuff counts. India, like I don't know, dude. I don't know what relevant experience counts in India. Sri, go up. You got a question?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to, I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts that you're American, but you live in Canada.
Yeah.
Do you, have you noticed a difference in the job market for data science in Canada versus America in terms of like what expectations they have? Are there any differences to begin with?
I don't think there's difference in the job market. Like in terms of expectations, what they're looking for, it's exactly the same. Yeah, so I don't think there's really much of a difference. There's probably less people in Canada that are doing these type of roles, and that's again just like the entire population of Canada is like 30 something million, which is less than California. I think California itself has a greater population than all of Canada combined. So there are a bunch of roles here in Canada, and you'll see them open for months on end just because they can't get anybody to fill them. But yeah, I'd say that the in terms of what they're looking for, exactly the same.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up.
Yes.
If you're in the States, can you apply for a job in Canada?
Yeah. So the way things work in Canada is in order for you to get a job in Canada, in order for a Canadian company to offer a job to a non-Canadian permanent resident or non-Canadian citizen, that company has to get what's called a labor market opinion, right? And because I think it's the same thing in the US, right? Like you have a right or you have an obligation to employ your own citizens and your own permanent residents before you look for outside people. Like you are obligated to do that as a country. And so in order for a Canadian company to hire somebody from outside, they have to get this thing called a labor market opinion saying, you know what, we can't find enough Canadians to fill this role. So that's why we have to go and look for somebody outside of Canada. And then from there, it's like once they get that labor market opinion done, it's like a process for getting the visa set up and all that stuff. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
So you're saying it's much more difficult. There are a lot of other obstacles that need to be.
Yeah. So when I came to Canada, it was I was able to come in through what was called there's this NAFTA agreement, and there's certain job functions that you can easily expedite your process of getting into Canada. So for me, it was, you know, I was a mathematician, statistician, and actuary. That was the class of jobs that I fell into. So that just made the process a little bit easier because I moved to Canada working as a statistician about, you know, pharmaceutical company. So yeah. But I mean, that might be changing now that we live in such a remote world. So
Thanks.
yeah. All right. So shout out to everybody else joining in. I saw Admin hollering at the chat there in LinkedIn. Asha, what's going on? Good to see you again. How's your week been?
Not bad at all. How was
Awesome.
yours?
Good. It's been a long week, man. Let me tell you, been a long week. A lot of ups and downs. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, dude. I mean, I get so worked up and excited when it comes to me telling people that you have to take shit into your own hands and make it happen. So my apologies if I come off like really just like aggressive about this, because I can't stand when people make excuses for themselves about things that they can make happen for themselves. So if anybody was out like, damn, this guy's really aggressive, it's because I'm aggressive about certain things in particular, right? But yeah, that being said, Asha, what's going on? Any questions, any comments, anything you want to share with us?
I think I even missed better part of it. I just got in.
Oh, nice.
Like
Well,
I always
welcome.
miss the good discussions.
It's always recorded and always shared. So yeah. No, I was just talking about you know how to get experience in that. You know, in this field, you don't actually need a job to get real world experience because data is everywhere. Like, the data is the real world. And you can always create real cool projects, right? Like you should develop 3 projects, only 3 projects, right? One project should be a kind of a data engineering ETL type of project. And this project should be pulling data from maybe an API, right? And you get that data and it comes in as like a JSON blob, and then you add structure to that JSON blob, and then you do some interesting transformations and feature engineering, whatever, and then you dump that into a database, maybe a cloud database or a local database, whatever, and just automate that process, right? That's one type of project you should do. Showcase your data engineering skill set, right? Obviously, data engineering job is far more difficult than that, but at least as a data scientist, you should be able to pull data, structure data, dump it to a database, and automate that process so that it happens, automatically. The next type of project you should do is just like an end-to-end project where maybe you're deploying a small Flask app, right? And end-to-end meaning you start with raw data, go through the ETL process, do a modeling bit, and then serve it, whether it's locally or on the cloud somewhere. And then the third type of project you do is just the one that really dives deep into the area that you're most interested in. So like your superpower, right? And your superpower can be anything, right? Like if you are, for example, me, a statistician, or when I was transitioning into data science, I was mathematician, statistician. That was my superpower. So I did a project that was entirely focused on statistics and machine learning, classical machine learning. But if your superpower is software engineering, well, then you can really double down on that in a project. If your superpower is, I don't know, product management, maybe you could talk about how build a project where you're really framing the problem statement and business value of your project, right? So whatever your superpower is, whatever it is that you're most interested in, if it's NLP, do an NLP project. If it's computer vision, do a computer vision project, so on and so forth, right? So those 3 type of projects, and like that's really enough to showcase that you can do the job. That is my firm belief, and I'm sure many other people would agree with me. And if they don't, then that's okay. Awesome. So shout out to everybody else in the room. SOHOM, what's up? There's a question here on LinkedIn. Let me just go ahead and answer that. Question is, how much big data and cloud computing play a role in data scientist job? It plays a big role for those jobs in which that is a requirement. So yes, I mean, you should have some knowledge of it, right? You should have that in your toolkit. More importantly, you should be able to learn that thing quickly as possible. I think that's, I mean, Kenji was talking about this on the happy hour the other day. More important than the actual discrete technical skill is the meta skill of learning, the meta skill of being able to pick something up. And if you need tips on learning how to learn, tune into the episode I released on Friday with the one and only Dr. Barbara Oakley, who had a course called Learning How to Learn, the most popular course on Coursera. Like millions of people have taken that course. She wrote a book called A Mind for Numbers as well. Had an opportunity to bring her onto the podcast. Then another episode I did was with Scott Young, author of Ultra Learning. So those two books combined will give you a solid framework on how to learn, how to create small projects for yourself. It's enough self-promotion. If anybody has questions, go ahead and let me know. Scanning all of the streams, don't see any other questions. Maybe I missed them, but if anybody has a question right here, let me know. Christoph, go for it.
Okay, so just like I said, my question isn't about data science, but it's somehow connected. Harpreet, you're creative person. I mean, you came up with ideas for podcasts, for these mentoring sessions, for content creator awards. So I believe that you think creativity is a skill, like something that you can improve. It's like a muscle you can work on. So my question is for you, but it's for everybody. How do you boost creativity? How do you come up with new ideas? Do you have any habits for that or routines?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the podcast I'm releasing next Friday with the one and only James Altucher, the idea machine himself, it's going to be kind of covering that, right? So James Altucher does this thing he calls he has this thing he calls the idea muscle, right? And one of his practices is just writing 10 ideas a day, every day, and just writing those ideas out. And they don't have to be good ideas, they don't have to be bad ideas, just as long as you're writing ideas out. And they can be ideas on anything. It could be 10 ideas for 10 ideas for my next LinkedIn post, 10 ideas for a headline, 10 ideas for what I want to eat for dinner, whatever. Just 10 ideas a day. You just have to keep on flexing that idea muscle. And really, creativity is just combining things, right? Just combining different things together. I'm reading this book right here, The Creativity Leap by Natalie Nixon. She'll be coming on the podcast soon. She sent me the book and everything, and I've got a copy of the book to give away as well. We need to get her booked up. But yeah, The Creativity Leap is a good book. It's all about connecting ideas and connecting dots that on the surface don't look like they make sense or belong together, but that intersection becomes powerful. So I don't know if that's answer your question or not. It's really just thinking about, okay.
So it's like just doing it, like sitting, like having some time every day or every week, some block just for sitting with a piece of paper or anything and writing down any ideas. Like you choose the topic you want to create ideas about, and you just do it.
Yeah, you need to create that space, right? That space and time for yourself to do it. And for me, it's, just consistently every morning coming down here in this room, have this space, and I just show up here whether I want to or not. And I just start doing things, I start writing, right? Like I write every morning, and out of that writing, ideas come out. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's a cool idea. Let me try that. Let me try that. Or just being aware and open-minded enough to really see things, in a different perspective. So if you want some really good tips on that, there's 2 episodes that I released that really, really touch deep on this. One of them was the interview I did with Christian Bush, who wrote the Serendipity Mindset. And then the other one was, I forgot the name of that, what I titled that episode. But if you look it up, it'll be there on my podcast. And then one I did with Nir Bashan, we talked about creativity as a mindset. So if you definitely listen to those 2 interviews that I did, and you'll get a lot of good insight into how to be more creative, how to think creatively. But it is essentially all about connecting dots that maybe don't look like they make sense, and giving yourself the time and space to think creatively, and just being completely open-minded, right? And just a lot of it is just not being afraid, right? Like I didn't care if people thought it was stupid if I did like the People's Choice Awards for data scientists. Like I'm just gonna do it anyways. And I'll reach out to Kate, and Kate might think it's stupid, and I might have to do it on my own. But Kate thought it was awesome, and she wanted to do it, and it worked out.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Just one question: what kind of writing are you doing in the morning? Is it like journaling, and that's
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
ideas come up?
Yeah, I do a few different things. So one of my big things is this right here. It's called The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron. So it's just a bunch of blank pages, but it's 3 handwritten free form pages every single morning that I write, and just like a brain dump. That's a big one. And then I'll have just I have this little mini thing. And if I'm on a walk, whatever, this is in my pocket, I'll just write ideas down. And yeah, just write in the morning. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be formal. It's just whatever. Just whatever's in your head, just write it out, right? And just let it flow.
I see.
Austin, let's hear from you on this.
Yeah, I was as soon as you said this, I was thinking of this. I don't know if anybody listens to this podcast, but the Ezra Klein show. He does a lot of just like really cool interviews. He's a great interviewer, political guy, but does a lot of different ones. And he had one with Jeff Tweedy, the lead singer of Wilco, the band Wilco. And Jeff Tweedy was talking about how he does that with words a lot, where he just like really focuses on these like word couplings or phrases that really stick in his mind. And he takes those phrases and then he tries to pick apart why they're very interesting to him, why these phrases like, and he just does this sort of mapping around that. From what I can tell, is like basically this phrase, what does that mean? And he just puzzles on it and writes about it and teases out the connections, those unexpected connections, because creativity is all about, Harpreet was saying this, like association, right? It's all about making these unlikely connections, whether it's between words or a problem and a solution, whatever it is. So I think like building that part of your brain that's making associations, even if it's you're going out on a walk and imagining what an animal is feeling or developing empathy, like all of these things can contribute to creativity because they're creating associations between what you're experiencing and what you imagine. And I think that's like a super important part of the process, whether it's through words or problems you're solving in your life, whatever it is. I think that's like really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's some great tips there too. Just yeah,
I love that about thinking what animals are thinking or feeling. That I've never heard about it, and it sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is also like Austin put here in the chat. I really like this, is just disconnecting process from the outcome. I think that is super, super important. You just do it. Who cares what the outcome is going to be? As long as you're focused on the actual doing it, the actual doing part of it, right? So there's some questions coming in here in the chat. It's funny. I think Kate joined in on LinkedIn right at the moment where I'd like mentioned her name, like she just summoned and appeared. Kate, what's going on? Couple of questions here there's questions here in the room. There's a question on LinkedIn. Let's go to the question here in the room from SOHOM. SOHOM can't join the video or chat due to network issues, but he has a question about how important do I think a US or Canada-based MS degree to become a machine learning engineer from a software engineer? Is there any other way we can make it happen? I guess the question is, do I need to get a master's degree from the US or Canada to become a machine learning engineer? I don't think so. I think you can pick it up on the side and learn everything that you need to learn. If you're going for a research type of role, right? If you're going to work at a research organization, there you're going to definitely need to have more academic experience, right? Just because researching is a skill, the ability to research is a skill, and it requires somebody to be very, self-driven, and it requires somebody to be really disciplined and rigorous about how they go through something. And you don't get that in undergraduate programs that much, because you just kind of show up to school, take your exams and pass. Whereas graduate programs in like master's and PhD, they're much more self-led. You have to do a lot of research on your own. It's more than just showing up and taking, an exam. So if you want to be in a research type of position, I think graduate degree is going to be extremely important. is it does have to be from US or Canada. Like, I don't know, maybe it sounds to me like you're again talking about India. Like, I know nothing about the Indian job market. I know nothing about the job markets outside of the Western world. It's not even a comment on India because I know nothing about it. It is an entirely different beast. Again, for the reasons that we discussed, different culture, different value system, and you literally have way more competition. So things are different. Asha, go for it.
No, my question is very different from this. I'm going to pull towards something else. I have a question. When you're learning something and you come across a hard topic, sometimes you're stuck there for days and days. How do you get past the hard things? How do you get back to normal learning when you get to the hard parts? I guess that's what I wanted to ask, because I've been hitting a wall. Then when you get frustrated, you just leave it be.
That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. If you get frustrated, just get up. Yeah. Get up, walk away, take some time off, and think about something else or do something else. That's kind of what I would do. So, because you got to understand, like during that frustrating parts, those parts that you're describing, that's actually where the learning actually happens, right? The learning doesn't happen when it's easy. The learning happens in those difficult parts. So first thing is just don't put a time constraint on yourself, right? Like, oh man, I got to learn this thing in 3 days, otherwise it's useless, because it's just a process, right? So this is kind of like my learning plan for anything that I do, right? So for example, like I'm learning natural language processing right now. It's something that I've been really interested in because I'm sitting on a wealth of text data from the podcast, right? And my way of learning it is this: I'll spend a week just reading through books, reading articles, just kind of getting putting the ideas in my head, like, okay, this is what natural language processing looks like, right? This is what it's all about at a high level, just understand it superficially. And then I'll do a project, right? And the project is just, okay, how does this thing fit together? I don't care about the in-depth bits of it. I don't care about the details of TF-IDF or word embeddings or word to vec or anything like that right now. I just want to see how things fit together, right? How do I go from an actual corpus of text to a, actual model that can classify it? How do these pieces fit together? And then I'll do that part. And then I'll go back from the very beginning and say, okay, great. Maybe I followed some tutorials and I've done some stuff and I've kind of patched something together, just understand the workflow. Now let me go back and dig in on, okay, like what does TF-IDF actually do? What are the different types of TF-IDF? How is my result going to change if I try this type of vectorization versus another type, right? And assess the impact on that. And if I don't understand like the nitty-gritty details of the math, I'm just like, okay, as long as I understand the explanation of it, right? Like I don't need to understand the inner workings of it. I just need to understand the explanation for why this thing works. So for me, anything that I learn, I'm far more after the explanation, being able to grasp and understand the explanation for why it works, rather than like the nitty-gritty details of, why is it that I have to transpose this and then multiply by the inverse? And then why do I have to take the determinant and then find the value of some Hessian matrix? I don't understand. I really concern myself with that stuff unless I have to. As long as I understand the explanation, then I can dig deeper and deeper. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Hopefully it makes sense. Austin, what about you? What's your process like when learning? And if anybody else wants to share, I'd love to hear from you guys.
It's a good question. I think I take that point where you're making, Harpreet, and then I sort of will try to find someone to talk with about it. I've always found that that's super helpful for me, because one of the things that gets a blocker for me, and this maybe is more general, but it's like if it's all in my own head, or even all in my own writing, and I don't have anyone to talk to about it or talk with about a problem I'm facing, in that broad sort of sense, that connective sense, if I can find someone to sort of talk through things with, I just discover so much more about what I've actually been really thinking underneath the surface by like saying it out loud, hearing how someone responds, what questions they have. Because a lot of times you don't know the questions to ask until someone else comes in and like asks you the question. It's like, oh shit, that's the one that I need to actually spend more time thinking about, or we'll work it out right now. So I think having this collaborative mindset, and I think that's also really valuable when you're building your sort of portfolio and your preparation for job interviews and things like that, is that sort of collaborative thing as well, where you're working on problems with other people. So I think that's that's what I would say in addition to what Harpreet was saying, which I think is a really good point.
Christoph, go for it.
And I also agree, and I'd I'd like to add to try to make some analogies to what you're learning with something you already know, because that's how you can faster learning. I mean, you can get the idea of how it's working, and also don't worry if it takes too long, because what's too long? Well, you don't know it, because some things we learn are really difficult, and if you don't get it after 2 or 3 days, it happens. And I think we've all been through something like this. And so just don't pace yourself that after 3 days you should have already understood it. And if you don't, it means that it's something wrong with you. It's not. It's just so difficult. And if you get a chance, just try to talk to others about it, because it helps really. Because when you try to explain it, I mean, you could talk to someone who doesn't have any idea about it and just try to explain how you understand it, and you can come up with some explanations of things you didn't understand until that moment.
Yeah, that's where all the learning happens, man. That hard phase, that stuck phase. That's where, and like Christoph was saying, if you have to go back over it, if you have to restart, go for it, right? Like it's completely okay. Like another example from my personal life, right? Like professionally, I was talking about doing NLP, but also like I just been really interested for some reason in like you guys would think I'm crazy, but like quantum mechanics, many worlds theory, things like that. So I've been listening to this book from David Deutsch, The Fabric of Reality. And like I've had to listen to the first chapter like 3 times, and like on like 0.8 speed, because it's so like crazy. My mind is being blown every minute I'm reading it. And so I supplement that reading with, okay, let me go watch, interviews with him. Let me see what he's saying about it. Let me find people who have podcasts that are talking about his stuff. Like, for example, like when I was reading Nassim Taleb stuff, I found some dude who did a podcast that just broke down everything that Nassim Taleb was talking about, and, easier digestible kind of pieces. And yeah, and it's crazy. Like I wrestle with those ideas. It's tough. It's challenging, but I don't really care about understanding the details of it. I just care more about the explanation. Like, can I understand the explanation, right? Because that's what really I'm going for when I'm learning some things. I just want understanding. I'd rather understand explanations and why things are happening than like the actual nitty gritty of it. Go for it, Asha.
Now I was just going to add, if you need a quantum mechanics tutor, I volunteer.
Really? Are you into that stuff?
It was a few of the units I did, yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, we're gonna have to have some chats, because this stuff is wild. It is insane. I was watching this documentary last night it must have been like 30 years old. I think it's from 1992. It was a BBC documentary with David Deutsch while he was writing his book, The Fabric of Reality. And he was talking about interference patterns and wave interference. And like, I was just like, what is going on? That is insane. But yeah, we'll definitely chat. Are you familiar with David Deutsch's stuff? Like, have you read his book, The Fabric of Reality or Beginning of Infinity?
No, but I should. I read what I had to in terms of class notes, because it was a few units. I did 2 of those units.
Yeah.
So I had to pass them.
Yeah, stuff is so crazy, man. And for me, like it's going to be difficult for me to understand quantum theory or quantum mechanics from the physics point of view, but I can understand it from a probabilistic sense, right? So I'm understanding something from my frame of reference that's kind of tangential to it, that is coming at it orthogonally, perpendicularly, right? Because of how deeply I understand probability theory, it helps me understand quantum mechanics, the explanations of it a little bit more, right? So that's another thing you can do when you're learning, when you're stuck on something, is try to use what you already know and understand it from that perspective, if that makes sense. All right. Any other questions? There's a question here on LinkedIn. From Manish saying, have a fear of showing my skill. I'm learning a lot of stuff from the internet, but not in the right direction. Wanted to become a demand planner and expert in time series forecasting. Any suggestion? Stop being scared to show your skill. That's one thing, and just do a lot of projects, man. Like that's how you get more confident. Like that's gonna be my answer to everybody for everything. How do I get a job in data science? Do a project. How do I get a job as a machine learning engineer? Do a project. Why? Because the doing is where you learn. The learning happens across iterations. It happens across the many, many iterations that you do the thing. You know, that's what it's like. Because the world very easily gives us the opportunities to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. If I was the, you know, I got a corner grocery store here. If I was the owner of the corner grocery store and I had to use my time, would I just stock my shelves the way they are and just do that over and over? Or would I experiment? Would I maybe switch up the order of things that I stock the shelves? Would I change up the signs that I have outside? Would I switch up the marketing? Would I experiment with different pricings, right? To see what works. So the experimentation and the iterations, that's where the learning happens across that. Any other questions? I don't see anything else coming in through Twitch. Nobody ever watches on Twitch. It's like one viewer and it's me doing my own thing. The people watching on YouTube are silent, and looks like LinkedIn has no questions. Last opportunity for questions from anybody here. Go for it. If you guys have a question, now's the time, my friends.
Did you ever learn how to play the guitar? You said you were going to learn.
It's still sitting there. No, I have not. I have not. No. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. But I do like I will like kind of strum along on it. Like for example, when I'm frustrated or when I'm stuck, I just go to that thing and I'll play like G to C to D, like, or some power chords, or try to mimic some Green Day song. So I'll do that. But yeah, I mean, it's mostly there. I've got that thing there, and I've got this right here that I've. So these are things that I do when I'm stuck. So I got this Rubik's Cube that's like multi-dimensional Rubik's Cube, and I'll try to like play with it, put it together, things like that. Or this is kind of like my go-to when I'm stuck, is to like play around with this. Yeah, because when you're stuck, you need that ability to let your mind wander. If you want to get into neuroscience of it, right? There's I don't know much about neuroscience, so if anybody is listening on LinkedIn and is like, this guy has no clue what he's talking about, it's because I'm just regurgitating what I've learned from other people. But like there's, you know, this, and Barbara Oakley talks about it in our interview as well, like the diffuse mode of thinking, right? So where you are not entirely focused on something, but it's your back of your mind, your subconscious is kind of wrestling it over while you're doing a different task, and then all of a sudden you'll notice a idea pop up or a breakthrough pop up, and it starts connecting and making sense. So the more frustrated you are, the more you need to take that as an indication that you need to get up, walk away, do something different. All right. No other questions or comments or anything from anyone. Appreciate everybody joining in, everybody on LinkedIn, everybody here in the room with us. Christoph, go for it.
Just a quick question, because when you've got, does it help when you've got this Rubik cube? Because I believe this diffused mode is supposed to let all the focus go, and when you do when you're solving some kind of puzzles, you're focused on them. It's like playing chess. Isn't a good way to go to diffused mode because you're focusing on playing chess. So I'm just curious if that's really help.
Yeah, I mean, it just helps to just stop thinking about the thing that you're thinking about. That's kind of like the goal of it, right? So like this, like I wouldn't say like I'm like fully focused on solving this. I'm just like kind of like just thinking and, you know, working on it, not really focusing my attention entirely on this thing. So that's kind of how I use it. Like I'm not like intently focused on, because like I've had this for months and I still haven't been able to put it back together, just because I'm like playing around with it and, you know, being tactile and having fun with it. Yeah. Awesome. So it looks like there are no other questions or comments. Thank you everybody for joining in. Appreciate you. You know, been a lively discussion. Like I get hyped up. So like I get crazy, man, when it comes to getting shit, when it comes to like getting after what it is that you want to get done. And, you know, people make excuses for themselves. I will not tolerate it. I say, just do it, make it happen. That being said, guys, take care. Remember, you've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? Cheers, everyone.